thing. We're having it now.
Yes.
So these are directional mics, and for directional mics, you just got to be a little bit on it. So like if you turn your head,
it's
the
gonna
sound is
different.
Yeah,
Okay.
You know the fizzle.
I'll go right in.
You
I'll
know
go right
the
into the
fizzle.
mic like this.
There you go.
Unless I get loud, then I'll go back.
Do your thing. That's all for post-production. I can't do it with my hand.
Man.
I wish I could, but I can't. Did it
look
look good? Did it look good on camera?
It looked good. It looked good. Man.
All right. Well, you know what? I'm gonna try. I'll try. I said I was gonna try. I'll try.
It's pretty smooth.
All right. Let's do this.
Cool.
Ready and we are in the summit of Denver, Colorado. Okay, the annual. We come together once a year for some I want to say R&R, relaxation, learning, and developing our orgs. This is the Big Green DAO. We're unstoppable growth going on. But this is the Power Plan podcast. My co-host is Stephen Luck. He's not here with us today because he's in the groove. But I do have a special guest that's sitting down with us this morning. Could you please introduce yourself? Like, who are you? What's your organization?
Hi, my name is Janett Lewis, and my organization is called Rustic Roots Sanctuary. It's down in St. Louis, Missouri.
Okay. I'm sorry, is that the Show Me State?
It is the Show Me State.
I always wondered, like, what does that mean? What does that mean?
I think it means, like, you gotta really prove yourself. So I did move to St. Louis from San Diego, California.
Okay.
And I can remember when I started my farm, people were kind of like, basically it was just a big pile of dirt and mud in the beginning. So when I told people what I wanted to do, I feel like a lot of them were like, you got to show me first. So I think that's why they call it the Show Me Stage.
I see how it is. I had a short stint in Missouri, and that was down in Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri. So yeah, that was my Army time a while ago. But I do definitely remember Missouri.
That's awesome. My dad was stationed there when I was like knee-high to a grasshopper.
Okay.
So, yeah, I spent some time in Fort Leonard Wood too.
All right. That's the school engineering's done there. That's the home of drill sergeants too. So as a young private walking around, the towns down there, I kept on running into all the drill sergeants. This really sucks if if you have some background in the Army times and whatnot. But what is on the docket for you? First of all, I want to know, what are you trying to do in your neighborhood? What are you trying to do out there? What's your mission for the next few, let's say, over this next year? What are your goals? What are some of the things you want to try to do?
Well, one of the things that we're working on currently is working with our government, like our local government, to kind of free up zoning restrictions so that more people can grow food. And there's just a lot of different things going on. I'm actually going to have a public hearing in a week where I get to go and try to get a CUP, which is a conditional use permit. And it seems silly that you would need something like a conditional use permit to grow food for your community, especially when you're in a community that's suffering from food apartheid, but that's where I'm at right now.
So would you say, you live in a food desert?
Absolutely.
And is that East Missouri, St. Louis, Missouri? Is that east side or is that the west side of it?
So
you got the Mississippi that splits St. Louis, right?
And actually, yeah, so we're in Spanish Lake, which is literally where the confluence is. It's the largest confluence in North America, and we're probably 5 minutes from there. So it is a food desert, or what the USDA would consider a food desert. We like to call it food apartheid because that acknowledges all the systems that have been broken for so long that led us to living in a food desert, so they call it. But yeah, so we're just growing food. We're up there by where the rivers meet. And we have one grocery store to feed over 18,000 residents, many of which don't have cars or sharing a car, so it's really hard to get food. And those are the kind of systems we are working to obliterate.
So I gotta ask y'all, Janett, like you were in Cali, San Diego, up near the beach, right near the beach, man.
Oh man, I love
Right
it out
near the
there.
beach. And you went from that to a place of apartheid, like food desert. What convinced you to do that?
Well, so when I lived in San Diego, I had this big vision. This was probably like 20, 30 years ago. And I wanted to do like a women's retreat. So I was coming off of my second divorce, which was terrible. And I was like running from my trauma and my history. And I thought like how cool it would be if people could get grounded in nature and centered and eat farm to table, do massage and meditate, those types of things, instead of running into the next horrible relationship or drugs or alcohol abuse. So I had this dream of doing that, and in order to make my dream come true, I was like, how am I gonna afford this? So I ended up getting into real estate, and at first I was a real estate agent, and then I became a real estate broker, and I was trying to make this money so that I could start the retreat, and I basically forgot about my retreat idea, and ended up just being a full-time real estate broker. So my tagline was, call me, because everything I touch turns to sold. And so I got busy with the real estate, and then I realized, you know what, I could barely even afford a house in San Diego, California. I mean, you could get maybe 1/8 of an acre for $500,000 to $700,000.
Crazy.
Yeah, so it would have been a ton of commissions, and I really started thinking about becoming a real estate investor, because that's where you can cash flow and kind of sit back, and that was my retirement plan. So where can you get super cheap property and fix them up for almost no cost and then rent them out in cash flow right away?
State of Missouri.
Missouri. So that's what took me to St. Louis. And the funny thing about Spanish Lake, it's an unincorporated St. Louis County, is it is so naturally diverse and beautiful that you would never see. Like if you're not from there and you just drove through there, you'd be like, wow, this is so beautiful.
Yeah.
So like I really had no clue what I was getting myself into. You know, I started buying up these properties sight unseen. And they were like anywhere from, well, like the cheapest one I got was on a tax sale. It was $7,500. And then a lot of them were like $22,000, but they were just super cheap. So I bought up a bunch of real estate, 7 houses to start, and started getting to work on rehabbing them. And while I was there renting out properties, I started realizing I was becoming part of the problem there. So St. Louis, specifically Spanish Lake, has this rental market where out-of-town landlords will go and buy up the property. They'll kind of do the bare minimum. They call it lipstick on the pig, you know. I'm like, oh, don't insult the little pigs now that I'm a farmer. You know? But yeah, so they would go and do that and then not really care for the properties, and so they get run down and
Slumlords.
slumlords, so cause more issues. So I was determined to not be that way, because my father raised me on leave every place you go a little better than you find it, right?
Okay.
So I was fixing them up like above and beyond. But what started happening was my tenants would go into the holidays and they would stop paying rent from December to
January-ish,
Oh.
February.
like March, April.
Okay.
Yeah, so like after you go for months, and there's no way of like coming back from that once it starts to stack up.
Yeah.
So I just ended up, you know, having to go through the eviction process and putting people out, and then being very resentful and busting up my house that I had done above what, you know, the typical house was looking like. So I realized kind of quickly that that was not going to work. But while that was happening, I had my own property in the area that was on 3.5 acres.
That's pretty big.
It's a good little size piece of land there. And then, So next door, I had a house that became like a nuisance property. It was suffering from vandalism, illegal dumping, and then two fires. That the first one was like burn the house down 10%, and the second one burned the house down 75%.
Okay.
So after that, I kind of was like, I'm gonna buy this house out of probate. It was on 3.5 acres too. And so I called the probate attorney. Luckily, my background in real estate, kind of helped me wheel and deal with him. And he was like, well, I'll give it to you for 75% of the appraised value. And I was like, well, what's the appraised value? I think it was like $14,900. Don't check my math, But anyways, I went ahead and got it for like what I considered a great deal, $12,000 for 3.5 acres.
Yeah, that's not bad.
Right. So with that, I actually, after we bulldozed the house, I went to the community and had my first meeting and engaged the community around, we live in a food desert now, an area that's devoid of fresh nutrients and food, and would you like to help me grow? And so I started a community garden called Grow Spanish Lake. 30 members of our community signed up that day. And so that was the first thing. We installed the garden. And then from there, it just kept growing and growing and growing. So last year we were able to grow 18,640 pounds of food. Yes, we had about over 250 pounds of honey. And yeah, we make value-added products like elderberry medicine, ginger tinctures, like all different kinds of things that we get from the land.
Well, it sounds like you showing up and showing out over there in the Show Me State.
I'm showing them.
First off, I'm really inspired about your story and how you came into that community and recognize what you were contributing to, and now here you are, like being a champion of change when it comes to like local government, and I think a lot of people like lose sight of that, like. You can create these opportunities of change, whether it be a change of your own life, coming out of Cali and moving over to Missouri. But how did you recognize? Like, how did you really recognize that you were creating this? You were doing the same thing that a lot of other real estate folks were doing, like the folks that were doing the slumlord stuff. You recognized it, and you were like, "Yo, I'm gonna." What I produce here is going to be well above and beyond reproach. But like, when did you really, when did it hit you though? Like, what happened? Was it that 3 months, nobody's paying rent?
Well, that was part of it. I mean, it's a flawed retirement plan if you actually don't collect the money. So, but one of the evictions that I was going through, this lady was very upset. Like, she was highly volatile. So I ended up calling the police. And what happened was, when the police got to the house, they were basically like, you need to take your investing dollars somewhere else. This is a horrible neighborhood. And then they started telling me all these stories about shootings.
Murdered.
Yeah, like babies and stuff. And I was just like, holy Toledo. So I went and I found this Netflix documentary called Spanish Lake. And I don't advise watching it because it's like super heavily racially biased. It was a guy who went from living on Maple Avenue, which is right around the corner from where I live, to LA, and he went back after white flight and all of that, and he came back and just talked about how horrible the neighborhood had become and how it no longer resembled the great little 1950s. So with all of that information, I got pissed, honestly. So at the end of that Netflix documentary, they were referring to a couple organizations. One of them is called the Spanish Lake Community Association, and then the other one was the Spanish Lake Community Development Corporation. And so I reached out to those organizations, and before I had even started the farm and the garden, I signed up for the Claremont CDC, or not the Claremont, sorry, that was California, the Spanish Lake CDC, which I also did similar volunteer work like that in San Diego, but it was way different. So I did 2 years of being a board member of the Spanish Lake Community Development Corporation. And then as the chair was stepping down, she asked me if I would take over. And so I chaired the Spanish Lake Community Development Corporation for 2 years. And they were basically tasked with trying to redevelop and help like the housing situation there. So in that time, we actually rehabbed 1 property, and on the side, I had already rehabbed like 6 properties in Spanish Lake. So I realized once you get into the place where you're asking the government to fund things, yes, then all of a sudden it had to be ADA compliant, and all of the government bureaucracy just slowed everything down to a crawl. So yeah, that's kind of where I was. And then, but during the time I was with the Spanish Lake CDC, I fell deeply in love with farming. And I can remember like the first time I ever dug worms, it was like a spiritual experience for me. I got goosebumps everywhere, and I was just like, oh my God, worms! Like the soil felt
alive.
Yeah, it was so alive, and that was where it was at for me. So as soon as I got connected to the earth in that way, it was all she wrote.
That's so fresh.
Yeah.
That's so fresh. Man, like, now that, you know, we went through the dystopian, you know, part of your story, then you transformed this area, you're producing thousands of pounds of food, you've got honey, you know, coming out the yin yang, like, and how has the community received that change? What did you see, like, from the community as you were growing food? You got you know, bees buzzing, you got worms doing their thing. Like, what change did you see in the community after that?
The community is like so incredibly grateful and gracious. Like everything we've ever needed, like there's more people than I can count coming out for us. Like we had trees fall on the garden, and the next day, like all these guys came out with chainsaws and they were like ready to clear all this wood off of the garden. I mean, it's just been like so beautiful. And one of the things that we do is we have a produce sale every weekend on the farm.
Yeah.
And then another program we do is a senior program. When COVID exploded in 2020 and people couldn't get out, we immediately decided to start taking our produce to the elders in our community. So if they have mobility issues, then we'll deliver it to them. And if they can get out, they come out to the farm. And it's amazing when they come out to the farm because a lot of them have seen farms growing up, you know, like this like what takes them back to when they were 6 years old.
So, you know, I see you talking so proudly about like the work there in the community. In fact, I saw some tears forming in your eyeballs there.
I didn't go all the way.
No, but that's it. I just want the listeners to know this because like there's a lot of work, a lot of pain that comes into that, and then like the reward is like overwhelming. Like I'm getting goosebumps listening to you talk about how that plot of land that you transformed into this life-giving, you know, piece, and now like you're trying to amplify that even more by working with government entities to spread that love. So like, what is the end result that you want to see from what you're about to do with that local government there in Spanish Lake?
I think that one of the most important things, like I've seen a lot of people basically going for their dreams and then get shut down by the government because it's just not conducive to like allowing people to think outside the box. Like status quo, the rules and regulations, systems that have been in place, you know, like the comprehensive plan that's happening right now in St. Louis County. They haven't done one of these since 1983.
Oh, God.
So there are all these systems that are holding the problems in place that need to be obliterated. And what I found is people are watching. Like there are a lot of people that haven't even talked to me. They're like, you know, or they'll come out to the produce sale and say, I've been watching you on Facebook for years, you know. So they're like following, they're watching, and they want to see what happens. It's the show me state, right?
Okay.
So they're like, is she gonna get beat down, run out of town, or what's gonna happen? So we have those people, and then we have the other people that's like, anything you need, I'm here. Like when I told them we were going to do this CUP hearing, we've already gotten a flood of email letters of support as to why we need this. And so what I'm hoping is I just keep leaning into this space of believe in infinite possibilities. And so what I'm wanting to do is bridge and create this new camaraderie with the county government. Like if we can, and my councilwoman is the chair of the county council, Shalonda Webb. Love her to pieces. Like she gave me my first award this past year for the Juneteenth celebration. And so as far as having someone who supports you, she completely supports me and the farm. But there's all of these other little systems that are getting in the way of us doing our work now.
Ooh,
so
that brings up a question for me, for you. What advice can you give to folks out there that want to create that change that you did? You like the change is there. Like as far as I can tell, like y'all mission is being accomplished, and now you're trying to amplify what you've done.
Mm-hmm.
What would your advice be to young organizations out there? Maybe they don't have all the assets yet. Maybe they're starting at zero, but they have the idea of transforming their community like you did with growing food.
Mm-hmm.
What advice would you give them?
I think, like, I'm somewhere in between. My first initial response would be, it's better to ask for forgiveness than permission, so build your stuff, boo. But then, okay, that's the unreasonable answer that's got me into a public hearing in a week, because I just built whatever the heck I wanted to build, and now they're like, pump the brakes.
Pump the brakes.
Right. So the other thing I would say is, sometimes you have to believe in your dreams when nobody else does. Even when the naysayers are going, that's not going to work, this is the reason why it won't, blah, 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 blah. You just keep listening to your insides. Like, I've always felt like this is the work that's on my heart, so I'm going to do it. And even if you told me it was wrong, I'm not going to listen to you. Thanks for sharing, but I'm going to build what I want to build anyway. So keep building. And also, if you can connect with someone who has weight in your county government, I would say go ahead and build that coalition, friendship, camaraderie, whatever you can, so that when stuff does hit the fan, you have someone on the inside that can help you navigate if you ever get to that point where you're like, uh-oh, I could have got myself into trouble, but luckily I have a friend on the other side who's going to help walk me through all this stuff.
So that's good that we're talking about this, because it leads us into our next question for you. Your garden sign. You walk into your garden, what is your garden sign going to say?
What is my garden sign going to say? Mm-hmm. My garden sign literally says, believe in infinite possibilities at the bottom.
There you go. Okay.
Yeah, so I'm just, I see a lot of, in St. Louis, I see a lot of limiting beliefs systems, and those belief systems are put in place, I feel like, by the limiting government. Mm-hmm. So if we can start believing in infinite possibilities, like what is possible, like if you could dream the biggest dream, what would it look like? Mm-hmm. And that's what you go for, because if you can believe it, dream it, see it, then you can achieve it. There's some cliche saying.
There is, and we're gonna have to pull that one back. Well, that's dope. How can people get a hold of you? How can we contact you? How can we follow you? How do we help out? How do we ask for advice?
Awesome. Yeah. So my organization is Rustic Roots Sanctuary, and so the website is rusticrootssanctuary.org. You can Google search Rustic Roots Sanctuary. Make sure you put the sanctuary in there, because it's a sanctuary for the people and the animals on the farm. But yeah, so if you Google search us, you can follow us on Instagram, which I'm horrible at social media, and right now I'm the executive director, the social media person, the website developer. You know how to.
It sounds like there's this job opportunity.
There is a job opportunity. If you want to write grants for us, or do social media marketing for us, create TikTok videos, or whatever all the cool things the youngsters are doing now, please reach out. But yes, so my phone number is actually on all of that stuff. So I'm very accessible. My email is info@rusticrootsanctuary.org. My name is Janett Lewis, and I'm super excited and happy to share like everything I've learned up until this point with everyone.
Well, don't be surprised if you have a bazillion people calling you up to try to help you out.
Come on, bazillion! I'll take 2.
Well, this is Staff Sergeant Mack. I'm here at Unstoppable Growth because, I mean, literally what's going, you got that definition. You fit that definition to a T. Loved having you here. Loved learning more about what you're doing. Like, your energy is great. I think just hearing off of what you've done, it already gave me goosebumps on the work that you're doing. And I'm going to be praying for your continued success.
Thank you.
And keep on transforming your community, man. Like, you just got an extra hero, an extra fan. I'll be cheering you on from the Mile High City.
Yay! And it's a beautiful city too.
And this is Staff Sergeant Mack.
At Janett Lewis.
Janett Lewis, let's do it.
Thanks.
Right on.
That's awesome.
That was good.
All right.
All right, man,
Yeah,
that's amazing.
I felt the heat coming up.